Accessing library computer data.
And to make sure history never forgets the name Enterprise.
Hey everybody! How's it going? Welcome to the Penske Podcast. If you haven't tuned in before, this is a podcast where we are going through all 178 episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation, giving our thoughts and feelings about each and every one. Right now we're up to episode 3 of season 3. This one is called The Survivors. It was directed by Les Landau, written by Michael Wagner, and it aired back on October 9th, 1989. In this episode, the Enterprise reaches a Federation colony where all but 2 of the 11,000 inhabitants have been killed by a mysterious attacker. The last 2 survivors, Kevin and Rashawn Uxbridge, an elderly couple, refuse assistance and do not want to be rescued by the crew. The Enterprise must determine why only 2 survivors remain on an otherwise obliterated planet. We're going to be joined by a bunch of people for this one. I think you guys should enjoy it. It's always lively, always exciting when you got more people. There'll be more than 2 on the podcast, even though there's only 2 survivors of this attack on poor... What planet is it? Delta Rana 4. Delta Rana 4. That is your Scrabble answer. Anyway, we right after this audio break, we're going to get deep into the survivors.
Captain, I've got something here. 37 degrees north and 62 degrees east. It's a structure.
Life. 2 life forms, possibly human. Put that area on the main viewer. Magnify.
The structure is located at the center of the vegetation, sir.
An entire planet obliterated, except for a few acres of trees and grass and 1 building.
It must be some kind of illusion.
Negative. It is as you see it.
Hey everybody, welcome back. How's it going? We're here to talk about the survivors, and I was going to bring a few people. I was going to bring not 1, not 2, but I brought them all. I brought 4 people. So, how's everybody doing? We've got Tana, we've got Sean, and we've got Clay. How are you guys?
We're doing great.
Good. Ready to talk about survivors?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Season 3. So thank you all for coming back on. I'm going to ruin this one by saying that I really love this episode. So now you can either adopt what I believe, or you can go out on your own way and go exactly the opposite direction. So what did everyone else think? Let's start with, I'm going to flip a coin, and it is a 5, which means that, Sean, you're going to start. It wasn't a coin, it was a dice.
I was gonna say, do you have a coin with 3 sides? Because that would be pretty awesome.
Wait, are you the? Does that mean you're the dungeon master of this podcast now?
Clay, I rolled a 5. You can't talk.
Let's talk about Deanna Troy's cleavage. I have the floor.
Anyway, guys, we're talking about survivors. So Sean, what'd you think about this one?
I liked it. I thought that it was nice, kind of a mystery. And if you had seen it for the first time and didn't know what the heck was going on, it is interesting. Whether or not the ending pays off, it's up to you, but it's not an episode that I would rewatch. It's not a lot really going on. My one criticism was I felt that Troy was being given these ice cream headaches for really no reason, just because they needed a subplot. But other than that, I thought it was a pretty good episode.
Yeah. Tana, what'd you think?
I really liked it, and I thought it was a perfectly good episode to watch. I think it's the first mystery episode that we have, and I liked seeing Picard get to the bottom of things.
Yeah, so, it is the first mystery, which I think... I was wondering, I didn't know if seasons 1 and 2 had a mystery that was just so bad that I wouldn't consider it a mystery. That might have happened, but yeah, it's definitely the first whodunit until the end, which is always one of my favorites. Clay, what'd you think?
I thought this episode was great. I agree with Sean. I don't think there's a lot of rewatch value. But as far as the story itself, I thought it was awesome. I actually loved the ending, and I agree that I don't know why they had to do the thing with Deanna Troy. I thought it was going to pay off. I thought there was going to be something more interesting or integral to the plot that came out of that, but not really.
Yep.
But yeah, I thought it was great.
Let's talk about, I think the Troy thing is like the weakest aspect of this episode. Mm-hmm. I think they do it just so that you know from the start that something's wrong with these people.
Yeah.
Which feels a little bit heavy-handed because you kind of assume that something is different about them, seeing as though they're the only 2 survivors of what seems to be a gigantic planet annihilation or something. But I think they do it just because they're like, something has to go wrong, and we have to know that these people are weird, and we'll get rid of Troy. And
which is the most important thing.
No,
right.
I think it gives the alien, the godlike alien, a chance to reveal himself as a creature of conscience, and at the very end do the right thing, and really demonstrate the character that he has. Because otherwise all we have to go on is his word and this huge genocide.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's a good point. I just wish there was another way they could have done it. Because I mean, her, as we've said multiple times here, she is like the most powerful character that they don't know what to do with, and I feel like there could have been something more for her to do in this episode than just have a Cardigan song stuck in her head.
I totally agree. I was actually thinking of what I would do to fix this or make it better, and I feel like she might have been able to sense that those two characters were lying or something was off.
Well, yeah, that's what they said. That's why he does that to her.
Oh, so he neutralized her.
Yeah, because he was getting too close to figuring out what was going on with him, so he, sent this telepathic music to her to stop her from being able to focus on what was really going on the planet.
It's a little weird though, because he somehow knows that there's a telepath in orbit, but every other time he does something, he never seems aware about whether the Enterprise is left or not. So
that's the biggest flaw of the whole episode.
It's kind of a weird. He like preemptively. I would have been okay if that little. Well, I guess maybe you could just argue that his little music box is just constantly going, and it's kind of like a Green Lantern like source of his power or something, and it just so happens to have this terrible effect on telepaths.
I was concerned. I came to see if I could be of any help.
I'm fine. There's nothing wrong. I'm just tired, that's all.
Now, I may not have your gifts at reading emotions, Counselor, but I can tell when someone is in pain and hiding it.
It's so silly. I hear music. In my mind, music that won't stop.
Perhaps it's a symptom of fatigue. We've all been inflicted, one time or another, with that melody that won't go away.
No. It's deeper than that. The song doesn't stop for an instant. It plays in perfect clarity from beginning to end, over and over again. I don't even know what song it is. I never heard it before.
When did this start?
A few hours ago, while the away team was on the surface. I was thinking of Rishan and Kevin.
Rishan and Kevin?
I can't explain it, Captain. They're elusive. I'm sorry.
Well, try and rest. Take the necessary sleep inducements if you have to.
But if she had, I thought there was a great opportunity for her to grow as a character if she was the one to help solve this. If she was able to Professor X her way and sort of not challenge this guy because he's maybe too strong, but if she could prove herself and mentally overtake him or go around what he was doing and then give Picard the truth.
Or not even overtake him, but like I feel like it would have been had a little bit more. Well, I think it had some good weight to it, but I think maybe it would have made more narrative sense if she was the one who figured everything out,
right?
Or like she was the one who connected with him, as opposed to Picard just embarrassing him in front of the entire bridge, basically.
Right? And hoping that this powerful being isn't just like, okay, blink, you're done.
Yeah, also...
Picard does a lot of embarrassing. He flat out calls out Worf when he's just like, Lieutenant, I thought you said there was no fucking ships in the area.
I also, I mean, I'm sure we'll get to it, but is this like not the most powerful being in the history of the show?
Yeah, like this. Here we go with another godlike character that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, he's a step below Q, I feel, but he's pretty goddamn powerful.
I feel, yeah, he's a step below Q. I feel like this guy, his replications aren't quite right, where I feel like Q could actually make things again. He seems like he's a slightly nerfed version of whatever Q can be.
Yeah.
But
Well, he's out there in the field with his like light probe, like checking the soil. Yet he can make spaceships appear like thousands of light years away.
Yeah.
Jordy sees the booby trap that's just a rope that catches Riker in the ankle and hangs him upside down. Really? That's your booby trap?
Well, I mean, he's also trying to keep things on the DL here. I mean.
he said he gave up his powers, and the only reason that he got them back was because he had like an emotional breakdown. So I assume he's just kind of trying to lay low and not, do. He's been doing this for 50 years and pretending to be human and having to do all this stuff. The one last thing I wanted to say about Troy before we branch out is that I think Marina Sirtis is better when she plays like the screamy sort of horror movie character. She's a little bit better of an actress than when she's playing this like stoic, uptight counselor.
Yeah, she was pretty good.
Yeah.
All female characters make better victims. Isn't that right, Tana?
Just cute him up, Wes. Just cute him up.
So I don't know if you've covered this before, but it occurred to me in this episode after we had all read that article about her fashion sense. Is counselor actually a rank?
She's a lieutenant commander.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize she actually had a rank.
Yeah.
Because I know people always say, "Oh, but she's never in uniform." But it would make sense if she was, if she was like an NCO or something.
No, she's not.
She gets her uniform and her pips.
Oh.
She's fourth in command on the bridge. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at this stage, with Deanna Troy, they don't know what to do with her character, and she has the potential to be really powerful, but instead, she's just this character that doesn't act on her own. She just has things acted on her. So things happen to her. And I think we're going to see that pattern for a few more episodes, maybe even the rest of this season.
I think we see it for quite a while, in my opinion. She gets in Chain of Command is kind of a turning point for the character because Jellicoe makes her put on like a real uniform. Which will be interesting. I have so many things I want to say about Chain of Command, but that'll happen in 5 years. But I think this episode has some problems. The problems are, I think, probably the best case scenario that the show's ever going to have for problems. You kind of have to neutralize Troy, which makes sense to me. They do it a little bit poorly, where it feels a little bit undeserved. And then she doesn't really resolve the problem, which is fine. It kind of makes it weird that they dedicated so much screen time to this thing that was going on. Also, her steadfast refusal to go to sickbay struck me as weird. It was like, she's like, no, I want to stay here. And it's like, okay, why do you want to stay there? I guess it looks better when we have our final confrontation than in sickbay. I guess Do you guys think the mystery worked? Let's start with like a big idea.
I do.
I do too.
I must have maybe either skipped this one the last time I watched through the show, or maybe I just didn't remember it. But I was legitimately interested in what was going on because it had. This was one of the first ones I've seen so far where there wasn't really a hard cut A and B story. Everything was kind of working together.
Yeah.
And I thought it worked together pretty well.
Yeah, it's I can't remember the first time I saw it. I feel a big plus in this episode's favor is that Rashawn and Kevin are probably some of the better guest actors the show's had.
Yep.
I do get a little. There's always like the dust really stirs up towards the end for me of this episode. There's always a little bit of dust flying around in the room when Kevin's doing his I didn't kill one, I didn't kill 100, I killed them all. I feel. I feel the guest acting for how much, especially after which I just watched Ensigns of Command, which is dominated by a performance that was so bad they redubbed the guy's every single line the guy did.
Oh, no.
And the dubbed lines are so bad, I didn't even realize they were dubbing, and I was like, wow, that guy sucks as an actor. And then people were like, you realize all his lines were dubbed over? It's like, well, he sucks, and the guy dubbing the lines also sucks, which is amazing that you managed to get
That's why I've
things.
always wanted to get a job as a line dubber, because it seems like even if you're terrible, they blame it on the actor.
Yeah, that's right. What let's see. This is probably, I enjoyed the direction. This one, Les Landau did a pretty good job. They did a lot of good shots where they were showing, the camera was moving between things very effectively. The one thing I kind of fault, there's a ton of dramatic Riker close-ups in this episode.
Yes, my girlfriend pointed that out when we were watching it. Every time Picard leaves the bridge and they're cutting to commercial, it's always a super close-up on Riker.
And there's one of them, he breaks at the end of it, and they cut right after he starts laughing.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
It's like the first time they do it, it's very funny.
It must have been weird for Riker to go down to a planet and find a chick that he doesn't want to sleep with.
Well, I think you're jumping to a conclusion, Sean.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe he could sense that she wasn't real because he wasn't getting a hard on.
Where did they find that that house? Did that belong to like a record producer in the valley or something?
They shot it in Malibu. That's
really?
That's a Malibu location. Yeah, they actually went out there and shot on location.
That wasn't David Geffen's weekend orgy palace.
No, it's
I thought that what I really loved about this was Worf. He used to be the comic relief a lot of times, and I feel like they really understand Worf's ability to play the deadpan character and be funny.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I think they found their Worf already. It's nice to see.
They found it surprisingly early. He's been doing that for like a season and a half at this point, which is kind of shocking.
Oh yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I thought one of the things that I really liked about this episode is that it was, it wasn't really, it didn't have anyone specific from the crew really at the center, and everybody Picard was the main driving force, but everybody had something to do, and you've got some Worf bits that were, good Worf bits.
Yep.
Like I said when it started, I thought Troy was going to have a bigger part to play. But it felt more like an ensemble episode than just like, okay, we're going to follow Picard for 40 minutes, or okay, this is a Worf episode. But I thought they did it really well.
Yeah, that's true. I probably agree with that. It's in other episodes where they've had the entire crew doing something, it's usually this guy and this guy do this guy and this guy do that, and then they all sort of meet at the end, which is kind of a sitcom-y kind of structure. But this one felt natural in how the crew was actually doing, which has been a problem in the previous episodes. A lot of times it's like, why is this guy here? Or why is he just hanging out on the bridge at this point? This one felt pretty natural. You mentioned that Picard's the main character. I have one problem with Picard in this episode. I don't know if you guys agree. I feel like he figures it out a little bit too easily.
I liked that when he figures it out, the audience sort of figures it out with him. I felt like I was one step ahead of everybody else on the bridge. Mm-hmm. And even though it's maybe obvious to us who can hear the music and see the setup that there's this switch coming, when Picard starts testing Kevin and setting him up with like, I know what your next move is going to be. These are the only conditions under which the Enterprise is going to leave. And then he sort of sees what's coming. I felt like that was the showrunners taking a chance to see if they could engage the viewer more.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't think it was. I felt like his finding out what was going on wasn't like at a certain point early on in the episode he's got it all figured out, which is it's probably good that the crew didn't know what was going on, because everything he tried was what he was just trying it out. Basically, it seemed like step by step he was like, all right, well, okay, this worked. So maybe this time I'll just let the ship attack the planet and blow everything up and see what happens.
Yeah, that's a pretty big goddamn gamble that Picard took there.
It really is. And at the end, Kevin, or this alien, whatever his alien thing is, could destroy everything.
I have to interrupt. It's bad for. I know he's supposed to be human, but it's bad for him to call a creature in a sci-fi show Kevin. It's the same thing with Game of Thrones. There's now a character called Kevin, and it's they spell it Kevan, but it's pronounced Kevin, but they're like, it's in Game of Thrones, it's this huge like fantasy thing where it's like Throgdar and Ixhelheim, and it's like, bring me my sword, Kevin. And it's just like, why did he name him Kevin? You can't call him Kevin.
It reminded me of Monty Python, The Holy Grail, with Tim the Enchanter.
Yes.
That's who called me
Tim. Oh my God. Yeah, I think Picard, I guess you're right, Clay. Picard doesn't really figure it out soon. I think he makes a lot of correct guesses with very little information that he's given, which, makes sense in a 45-minute show or whatever needs to happen. But I do feel he makes a lot of very desperate guesses, and they all sort of turn out correctly. And I also don't know how he knew that Rashawn was the fake person.
That's a funny thing. He grabs her by the shoulders gently, and he's like, "Oh, I'm really sorry to tell you this person that doesn't even exist. I'm gonna really really use my kid gloves here, so I don't hurt your feelings, person that doesn't exist." And then poof, it's gone.
Well, it would have been great if they had some sort of self-aware moment of not being real and just freaked out and exploded or something.
Picard just backhands her.
I like how Kevin created her after his dead wife, and he still continued to take shit from her because he wanted them to leave. She's like, "Don't be a dick. Let them inside the house. They can watch us dance or whatever."
No, that's
the
same.
Bossy for an imaginary friend.
It's kind of like if Dr. Frankenstein made the monster, and it just kept getting in the way of all the things he was trying to do, and it's just like, God damn it! I made you, and you're just fucking everything up. This is terrible.
I think it makes sense because his whole thing. In order for this story to work, you have to buy the idea that basically a god being with limitless power wants nothing more than to be left alone and live a domesticated life with his human wife.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that if he's going to be creating her, he's going to be creating the version that he wanted to be with, which is just the way she. Maybe he did make changes. We don't know. Who knows?
Yeah,
But it's that. That kind of idea makes sense. That the stuff that he's doing is very domesticated, and the stuff that she's the same way she was before she died.
Yep.
If you can get past the fact that he turns out to be, being of limitless power, then I think it's fine.
Yeah.
How come he didn't make her younger when he brought her back? Tana.
Don't try to drag me into this crap, Sean.
My wife, Rashawn.
Well, I wondered why did he stop there? Why didn't he create everybody again?
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
I think it ties in the fact that he realizes that his powers aren't quite right. He could also just bring back the Husnock, but he doesn't. Because I think his whole power of creation is not right, and I maybe the show could have stressed that better.
What do you mean? They say that he says to Picard at the end when he's confessing to all his sins that he went insane and lost his mind and has lost control of his powers, and we get the sense at that moment when he's in the counselor's room talking to Picard that he's finally coming to. And it's not until that moment that he's like, "Oh, I'm waking up from this madness." And so I think the show writers probably tried to tuck that in there as a Band-Aid for a lot of things that just didn't make sense.
He's interesting because you don't, I guess you do get a glimpse of his power, but I always, when I'm watching this episode, I get the impression that he can easily destroy and that his abilities to create are not quite up to snuff. It's not, like I was saying earlier, he's not quite Q, who can actually make these things and make them sort of be perfect. Right. He's more, he makes automatons that he sort of controls or something like that.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Which would, because if he could easily create things, there would be no tension with him having destroyed a race. He would just be like, I'll create them again.
Right. Well, he's not creating them independently of himself. He's aware that what he's doing is an illusion.
Yes, right.
But he's choosing to live as though it's not.
Yep.
Question. Yeah. I like the sad Frankenstein on the hill vibe, and I feel like if they dumbed his powers down a bit, he's able to control things somewhat within his little square grass of land.
Right. Yeah.
But having him create spaceships that outrun the Enterprise or whatever, that's a little. I don't know. I feel like I get what they were trying to do, but he was too powerful, and it became distracting because his powers are so nebulous.
Yeah.
I have a quick question here. Something that's always confounded me about this episode. Is the ship that chases off the Enterprise a Husnock ship?
I don't think
That's the sense I got. Yeah.
I don't think they say, and I don't really think it matters. But
No, it doesn't matter. I'm always just.
I guess it would probably be. I guess.
They keep talking about how it's the ship that destroyed the planet.
Yeah.
Just because it has the firepower, Riker draws that conclusion.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I just when I was young and watched this, I assumed it was Husnock, and now I'm not so sure. So that's just
Yeah.
that's just,
It would be funny if it was like a really poorly designed ship and just like his design sense is really bad.
It's just like a shuttlecraft that's like flying around, zipping.
It's just like three rectangles like forced together.
But I mean, yeah,
it's shaped like his wife, but she has laser beam eyes. Can only create one thing at a time. He just reuses her.
Yeah, it's a good thing they didn't have any kids, right? He'd just have like little Rashans running around everywhere. Terrible. Yeah, it's
Kevin Jr. too.
Sir, may I say your attempt to hold the away team at bay with a non-functioning weapon was an act of unmitigated gall.
Didn't fool you, huh?
I admire gall.
The thing I liked about this, we also talked about it in Q Who, I think the show is just getting better at... I need my episodes with a godlike being to have some kind of ethical quandary about them. Mm-hmm. And I think this one does it really, really well. I love the ending of this episode. I think it's great. It's, I like Picard's line about we can't judge you.
Right.
Yeah. Like very literally, they can't judge him. That like nothing they say would mean anything. And I like his. I think the actor's great. If that actor had been terrible, his whole thing would have been a laughingstock at the
absolutely.
end.
He was in MacGyver. He played MacGyver's uncle for a while.
Yes, that's right. John Anderson. Anderson.
That ending, I think it's great. I'm a little on the fence. I think you hit it on the head, Wes. I think it works because that guy is such a good actor. But I was a little on the fence with the fact that he just basically explains to everybody what's going on.
Yeah.
But because generally I don't really like that. But in this case, I love the ending because it was, like you said, it was an ethical quandary involving a godlike being, but it also showed consequences to his actions, which is the number one thing I find lacking in most television, and just a lot of fiction in general is they do X, Y, and Z, but none of it really matters because it doesn't upset the status quo of anything. And the fact that you go through the entire his inaction caused this, which then caused his powers to explode, and then which caused him to kill an entire race of people, and now he has to actually sit and deal for eternity with these consequences. I really liked it.
Yeah. Just being essentially alone because he sort of realizes that his things aren't real, I'd assume. So he's kind of just sitting on this planet by himself.
I never got the impression that he didn't think, like he thought they were real. I just always assumed that he knew they were fake.
Right, but I guess deep down he must know that this is not the same thing, Right. Like I don't think the show stresses that, but that would be my guess about what's going on. He's it's interesting.
So can we talk about Troy's rack now or later?
Does anyone have any other things they wanted to talk about this episode? I love this one. I think it's hard to explain why I like it so much. Well, it's not really hard. I think it's just there's not a lot to talk about, particularly with this episode. I appreciate the way it goes. I love the ending. I love the characters. The guest actors are great. I like how you guys are saying that the crew has something to do in this episode.
Yep.
Everyone now... I wrote down... The development of the show is impressive. If you go back and you just watch the cold open or the opening scene, their dialogue... The writers are getting better at writing their dialogue as each character reveals a small fact that makes sense with their character.
Mm-hmm.
And the dialogue is much faster, and it's no longer just someone comes in and says something and everyone looks at him. It's like Worf will say, like, there's radiation. Data will give a little feedback. The Dr. Crusher says something. It's this. You get a sense of what the scene is about through the characters, each giving you one sentence that fulfills what their character would say in that situation.
Right.
And that's a huge step forward for what the show's been doing. It's just fascinating. Do you guys have any other thoughts about this one? We can talk about Troy after that.
I loved the sweet matte painting of the desolated world when they
yes.
when they hit the planet and you get that long shot of the house.
Yep.
That was a nice classic matte painting.
And then they move a little bit. Riker beams down like he's half in a sprint, and then he just sort of moves around a little bit. And he nicely overdubbed.
I like that it's starting to feel like what I remember Star Trek being.
Yes.
So they're talking the way they're supposed to. Each of them, like in this episode, we get to see Picard ahead of the curve, being the captain, sort of taking chances, but we trust him, and everybody else is sort of in their place, and it's starting to feel familiar and good.
Yeah.
I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sean.
I agree with you guys both completely. I was just going to also add, I like that the ending is kind of macabre. It's a very different kind of ending for Star Trek.
Yeah.
It's very few episodes in the series have because they didn't really do anything. They uncovered a mystery and then they couldn't do anything about it. The guy was too powerful. They just basically added to his Wikipedia page.
Yes.
Yeah, don't go there. But I thought it was unique just for that.
Yeah, I mean, like in the first season, if they tried to do this episode, it would probably be unwatchable.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing we've talked about previously is they're getting better at writing stories where nothing quote unquote happens, but you're still really interested in what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
I think anything could be like the first season is just utterly unwatchable, and so we're just repeating ourselves now.
There's some interesting things in the first season. A whole lot.
Yeah, like Tasha Yar.
Yeah.
Agree to disagree, Clay.
She didn't live up to her potential, okay?
Hey, a little bit of trivia for you guys, as I remember what the hell I was just going to say. But what makes its first appearance in this episode? Has to do with Troy.
Her
room.
Nope. That's
her turquoise.
It is.
Dress?
It's a turquoise leotard. This is the first time.
Now I can't not see anything she's wearing after we read that damn website.
That's where I found it. I was watching the episode this morning to review, and I was just curious to see what other people were saying. And I went to one of the sites that Wes sometimes cites, and they mentioned the first time we see that dress, and then they had a link, and it was like 7 things that, whatever the title of it was. And I sent it to Tana quickly and all of you guys, and then here we are.
Yeah, I don't know if this is some weird nerd focus. She doesn't her cleavage isn't that outrageous, and B,
I think it's just the fact that it's there at all.
That's kind of what I'm saying. It's kind of like a 12-year-old nerd is like, oh my god, and like. I just don't get it. It's
you guys like that when you were boys? Like, did you oogle Deanna Troi?
When we were boys?
When you were like 14 or whatever.
You mean not now, is what you're saying.
I oogled myself as I was watching it. No, I could see it being sort of because they're like, well, we fucked up bringing kids onto the show with Wesley Crusher because everyone hates him. So let's give him some tits, I think would be the like producer way of thinking there. I mean, because Yard.
Even as a gay lady, I cared more about what Troy brought to the Enterprise and not her body. And I wonder if that's just sort of like as an adult male trying to appeal to adolescent boys, does it work?
I honestly,
yes.
Well, for me, I don't actually know if I've ever really thought about it. Like it never really stood out as weird as it probably should.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was never something that, like, I don't know. I just assumed that's just what she wore. It didn't really affect me either way.
I don't feel like it's extreme enough. If she showed up just wearing a bra, you'd be like, wow, that's real crazy. But she's wearing a dress that you kind of see when you go out at night. Like people wear cleavage, like wear their cleavage like that. It's not something crazy. That's my whole thing.
Yeah.
With like
with 7 to me. So I wondered.
I agree with Tana. She wasn't sexy enough to divert my attention. I would have rather have seen her in a uniform just like everybody else. And Tasha Yar to Clay was sexy for some reason.
Oh,
for some unknowable reason.
Apparently you guys didn't see the Naked Now.
Yeah, fully functional.
Other than that one scene, she's mostly in a regular uniform, and her attractiveness still shines through. I don't think that they did Troy any favors by giving her a cheerleader outfit or any of these dresses and skirts.
Well, you know what I liked about that article we were talking about? I'll put a link in the video. If you're listening on iTunes, you kind of fucked. But if you're watching the YouTube video, you can find the link to this article. That article is funny because I love when actors appreciate their role in a TV show after the show is wrapped up.
Mm-hmm.
I think she did that. She was very big about her. Like, you know, I originally envisioned this for the character and it didn't quite work. And it's like, I've been given no sign that you're capable of doing these things.
You mean acting wise?
Right. Like she makes it play off like the producers just were holding her back.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't gotten the opinion that was really the case.
Well, I mean, to be fair, they don't really give her a lot to do. But I
think
go ahead.
It's like 7 of 9. Her character is attractive enough where it's like, wow, she's a really great actress, great character. Oh wow, she looks fantastic. Like if that was what they were going for, then I can see that having its place. But I don't think Troy was ever conveyed that way for me.
No, I don't think so either.
That goes into one of the reasons I was asking if whether or not she actually has a rank, because I just assumed, from the way that she dresses, one could make the assumption that, oh well, she's just like there to help out or something. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. She's like those ambassadors that come on and are just wearing casual clothing for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Tana, what did you feel reading that article? Because there's not a lot of female characters in the story overall on the crew, and then to sort of read her take on that outfit. I'm curious to know what you thought.
I always liked Deanna Troi in her uniform much more than I liked her in her leotards, but I sort of took the leotards with a grain of salt because that's all we ever had. And so I remember one of the episodes where she's going to she has to make hard decisions, and she's in a leadership position. And what if everybody on the crew, is dead and she's in charge? And so I remember her as a very powerful and empowered character. And so to go back and be looking at this stuff where she's just set dressing and things are like this episode, things happen to her and she can't do anything about it, and other people do things about it, and it's just kind of frustrating and a little bit sad to see.
Yeah.
She's interesting. I don't know what the problem with writing her was. Is it just that she's too powerful? There was someone, I think either on Reddit or something, was saying that the problem with Troy is that she's a plot-busting character.
What does that mean?
If you wrote her to actually be true to her character, she would just be like, this guy's lying, Captain. And they say, oh, well, fuck, lock him up. And that would be the end of the episode.
But I feel like because she's not a true empath and she only knows how people feel, like she can tell that they're holding back or they're not telling the whole truth. It doesn't make her all powerful. It just gives you an extra edge.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what the limits of her power actually are. Do they ever actually define what she can and can't do?
The closest they get is she can only feel emotion, where other full Betazoids, I guess, can feel like full thoughts.
Okay, then I wouldn't agree with the plot busting thing, because I think the tough thing is maybe she's not powerful enough, because you end up getting into these situations where everybody's in a room talking about something, and she's like, they say, "What do you think, counselor?" And she's like, "I don't know. He seems to be kind of irritated."
Yeah,
and that's all she can add to the conversation.
Yeah.
But maybe if she had a little bit more juice, she might have been easier to insert.
I think this. I don't mean to interrupt. I just want to drop this thing here. I remembered the one other weird issue I had with this, and it has to do with Troy. Why is Troy so hesitant to tell people that she's hearing music in her head?
Yeah, that seemed like an outlier.
Yeah, that was another reason why I thought it was going to play in somehow, because I thought it had some sort of significance or something, or I don't know, but
She's like in full-on sweats, and Riker's just staring at her. Riker clearly knows that something's wrong, and she's just
or maybe he was just getting an eyeful.
Maybe
she was wearing that turquoise thing.
He's like, maybe she's entering the phase. That'd be nice. We'll call back to a previous episode. Yeah, I can understand what you guys are saying. I feel if you limit her powers, I think she kind of ends up like the writers have her, where she doesn't really give you a lot of information, and you sit there watching the show going like, I wish she would give me more information. But if she gave you more information, you'd have to constantly have things like this happen to her in an episode where she gets incapacitated.
Here's a question. Why does she have to only be... Why did that character have to only be the counselor? I feel like it would have been a better character if they had combined her with somebody else. Like, what if...
She was like security... Like if she was
like what if instead of having Tasha and Troy be two different characters, why not make Tasha the security chief who also is half Betazoid or whatever?
Yeah.
That way she can still do what she does, but she has another function that you can use her for when she's not, instead of just having her sit on a chair.
Yeah.
I think she's actually in charge of cleaning up the holodeck after Riker.
Gross.
Any matter that's can be created can be destroyed. Just ask the dad.
That reminds me. Grossly enough, I had a question. So they bring down first of all, they bring down a
shitty replicator.
A replicator, yes.
Shitty one though, which I liked how they were like, this can make a few things.
Did they show it? Because I always assumed the replicator was like a gigantic machine, and they're just like, yeah, we left it on your table.
Yeah, no, they had it next to Worf. It's like one of those portable dishwashers. That's what it looked like.
So can the replicator create functioning organic material? So what I'm getting at in a small sense is, let's say you have the situation where these people need to it's just the two people and they need food, right?
Yep.
And they can replicate the food, but could you also replicate like seeds to plant?
I think they replicate beer. Like they can actually make non-synthaholic beverages, and if beer is organic and beer is alive, then technically they could be able to just print out plants or replacement hands, eyeballs. I would guess whatever.
You would think so. I don't think they've ever clarified it. I want to say that they can't, but I can't think of any reason why they wouldn't be able to.
Well, you will all find out when I finish my fan fiction.
Replicator technology 101.
Yeah. Michio Kaku was talking about replicators, and you guys probably heard this too, but he said that what they're doing basically is they make a copy of you somewhere else made out of local particles, but then what do you do with the copy that you started with? You have to kill it or atomize it. Mm-hmm. So every time you go somewhere...
you're talking about the transporter.
Right, the transporter. Okay. You're basically murdering somebody.
Yes, that's
kind of like the Prestige a little bit.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah. No. That's always the thing about it.
Prestige.
The Prestige. This is what are the terms in the magic? Prestige and the what? The reveal. I can't remember.
I forget what this one is.
Something the turn and the reveal.
There you go. That's right.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's I don't know. Do we have to get to our final opinions here on this one, or does anyone have anything else they want to bring up?
I would also like to say Crusher's hair is way better in this episode than it was the last two.
They really toned it down.
Yeah.
They didn't have a weird scene with Picard and Crusher in this one too. They've had kind of a recurring thing where I'm wondering if Picard and Crusher are dating at this point in the third season. They had that weird heart-to-heart about Wesley in the first one.
Right.
And then Ensigns of Command, they basically were in 10 forward sharing a drink, listening to music.
And that dynamic didn't really exist until this season, right?
No, in the Naked Now they wanted to have sex with each other.
Well, I mean, who wouldn't? But
I think that's always been there. I think.
It has. Okay, because I was wondering. Yeah. I was wondering. I noticed that too when we started season 3. I was wondering if maybe it was something they did because she wasn't working. They tried Pulaski, and then they went back, and so they needed to find a new angle to go with her.
No,
Yeah.
I think she's always been that way. It might just be because Pulaski was totally not that way that it seems extra jarring.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, I guess the way they dropped it in season 1 wasn't particularly obvious because it's an episode where you don't know. I guess they reveal everyone's true inhibition, or they get rid of their inhibitions, but you kind of don't know if these are the real way that these people should be acting at that point.
Right.
Yeah. Is what it is.
It's weird. Troy's had more camera time than any other female characters, yet she's the worst one. I mean, Crusher is more rounded, Pulaski was more rounded, Guinan's more rounded, but Troy's the one that keeps the.
I think you forgot one, Sean.
Yeah.
No, I did not.
Lieutenant Worf has always been chief of security. Just had bad days.
I don't know. Like, I feel like maybe the actress herself should have pushed more to get to round her character out. There was a couple of problems in Voyager where these actors that played these characters, I feel like they just didn't push their own character limitations.
Right, yeah.
And they just let the writers sort of fumble them, and then eventually they wrote the character off the show. I feel like, Riker, as creepy as he is, he did go to the writers and say, hey, I know how to play a saxophone. Let's make my character a musician. To put it in there, Picard obviously loves Shakespeare and so on and so forth.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you can see, I assume, Michael Dorn coming through with Worf. I mean, I'm sure they noticed, his comic timing is pretty good. And
yeah, he created his own weapon for Deep Space Nine. Like, he got rid of the bat'leth and wanted something new. They gave him like a cool dagger thing. That was all. Yeah, he went out of the way himself to find something new for his own character.
Awesome.
You guys are reminding me. I had one other thing about the episode I wanted to bring up. Was Worf particularly bad at his job this episode?
Shields are down. Captain, they hit us with 400 gigawatts of particle energy. Damage? Superficial, but I'm having trouble reassembling the shields. Shields down. There's thermal damage to the hull.
The warship is capable of striking us with far more powerful bursts.
They're maneuvering to come between the Enterprise and Rana 4.
Number 1, we have been exemplary in our patience.
Lieutenant Worf, fire phasers on full with a simultaneous spread of torpedoes.
The vessel appears undamaged, sir. Its defenses are apparently able to absorb incoming matter and energy.
Commence rapid fire with all weapons on full.
Shields down. Internal damage. Weapon systems control has been lost.
Riker to sickbay. Medical assistance to the bridge.
On our way, Commander.
Mr. Crusher, move the Enterprise out of range of the attacking vessel.
Aye, sir.
Mr. Wolf?
The vessel has terminated its pursuit. It is assuming an orbit around Rana 4.
Kevin and Rashawn.
We can't help them. But it's my guess they're in no danger.
Well, okay. I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because I really liked what he was doing in the episode, and what was getting me excited about the way they were going was I thought that he was going to play a bigger part in the resolution.
Yep.
Because they weren't spending a ton of time on him, but they kept dropping these things about him, feeling bad about not doing something right, or he's never encountered someone like me before, that kind of thing. I thought he was going to play into it a little bit more. I'm not sure why, but yeah, it ended up being more like he was just kind of bad at his job for the episode.
When they were under attack by the other ship, he was using and looking at those controls like he had never touched them before. It was a very awkward. He's like, I can't get the shields back up. He also seemed very kind of nervous, which is weird for him, like a Klingon character. I wouldn't have played it that way, I guess. So I demand that he be a little more sort of upright as things are falling to shit around him.
Yeah.
But he admires Gaul. We learned that about him.
I think he wasn't really afraid of these old people. He just couldn't get it out of his head that this was some kind of omnipotent being.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a good lesson for youngsters out there. When when you're talking to a superior and you don't claim you did a perfect job. It will always fail. Never say that you did anything perfect. It just won't work
Wes,
out.
there are no youngsters listening to this podcast.
You'd be surprised. Well, what I mean, that's actually something to talk about. The eventually, you know, like are the people watching this show really my age and older? I must be fairly young for how late I got into the show. You know what I mean? Because
How late did you get into the show?
Well, I mean, I would have been watching it in like right at its end. So probably 93.
That's when I started too. Yeah.
I would have been 10 at that point. So I just don't imagine anyone, you know, younger than me watching this in like 1987, because it would obviously not make any sense. It's just kind of it's a crowd that's getting older, I guess, and which is.
I think most people watched it with their parents. I feel if they were young and they saw it, it was like a grandfather, a father, a mother, or grandmother, whatever.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, hey, Junior, we used to have this in the '60s. You got to sit down. This is all about science. Like they had to sell it. And the kids were like, "Oh, okay, data's pretty cool, I guess." You know.
Yeah. Look at the boobs on that lady.
Yeah, there you go. And that's when Tana knew.
Yeah, Troy was how I knew.
And then Riker walked in and was like, "I want to be that guy."
And I was like, "Oh hell no! If these are my options, guys."
As a 10-year-old boy, I saw William Riker for the first time and said, "One day I will have a beard like that."
Yep.
Actually, yeah, you do have a pretty nice beard.
And I have achieved that status.
Yeah, you've gone full Riker.
I thought you would choose the way you sit in chairs a little differently, but just go straight up and down.
One day at a time.
You should see how I'm sitting right now. It's actually very kind of hunched over in a Riker sort of stance.
I still can't believe that they caught him in an ankle tree rope trap. Isn't Geordi the one that sees it?
Yeah, where were you in that one, Geordi?
Well, Geordi made the fatal mistake of trying to say much too fucking long of a sentence to warn somebody that a thing. He's like, "Commander Riker, don't take another step because there's a trap with a lasso," and oh shit, he got caught in it. Fuck.
And you know what happened? He got punished by not being in the rest of the episode.
That's true.
That's fair.
You know, I watched it.
Except for that one time they cut back to him when Picard's like, "We need more power," and he's like, "Oh, I'll make it go real fast, real soon." Warp 9, 10 seconds.
Yeah, that's a kind of a weird thing that Geordi has to sort of prime the engines. I don't feel I feel they drop that after a little while. But it's funny you reminded me. I didn't really understand why Geordi went down the first time to the planet.
Yep.
Yeah.
He was just there to say that line, I guess, or he needed to look at the house with his visor and tell people what a tricorder could tell them.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Data could have done all that stuff. I'm sort of fearing for Geordi. The show's already kind of. Wait, you know he makes it to the end of the series, right?
Oh, spoilers. Geordi might be getting the most relegated status out of everybody at this point.
Yeah.
He has very little to do.
Yeah.
Which is a true tragedy.
Yeah, I said it in my other podcast, I was never a fan of that character. Yeah, I think as we go forth, I hope you guys continue to agree with me. I want him to be good, but he doesn't have the chops. I don't think he doesn't have a lot of edge as an actor.
No, he certainly doesn't. He's much better as the Reading Rainbow character. Which is funny considering he played Kunta Kinte, and we're like a bunch of white people like no edge to this actor. I
prefer his educational work myself.
I had
well spoken.
I had PBS growing up. I remember that. Interesting. Well, guys, let's get to our final thoughts about Survivors right now.
What happened in Rana 4? The truth. This time, all of it.
Very well. For what it's worth, I am endowed an immortal being of disguises and false surroundings. I have lived in this galaxy for many thousands of years, although until the day no one has known my true identity. Once, while traveling in human form, I chanced to fall in love with an Earth woman. I put aside my powers and became her husband. Our life was happy and rich. Eventually, we came to this planet to live our final years. Now she is dead. She never knew what I really was.
Your colony was attacked by a warship.
Belonging to the Husnak, a species of hideous intelligence. Knew only aggression and destruction. I could have destroyed them with a mere thought, but I did not do so.
You had the power to stop them, but you didn't?
I refused to for the same reason that I refused to stop the Enterprise. I will not kill.
So you let the colonists fight a hopeless battle.
I tried to fool the Husnak. As I tried to fool you. It only made them angrier. More cruel.
And then what you most feared happened. Rishon went to fight with the colonists and died with them.
Oh, I wish I could have died with her.
But you couldn't. You were left alone.
Yes. I saw her broken body. I went insane. My hatred exploded, and in an instant of grief, I destroyed the Husnak.
Why did you try to hide this from all of us? Was it out of guilt for not helping Rishon and the others when they were alive?
No. You don't understand the scope of my crime. I didn't kill just one Husnak, or 100 or 1,000. I killed them all. All Husnak. Everywhere. Are 11,000 people worth 50 billion? Is the love of a woman worth the destruction of an entire species? This is the sin I tried so hard to keep you from learning of. Why I wanted to chase you from Rana.
We're not qualified to be your judges. We have no law to fit your crime. You're free to return to the planet. And to make Rishon live again.
Let's go in a row. We'll start with Tana. You know my rating system, 1 to 5. What,
3 is when you would watch it again, or what's a 3?
3 is a perfectly average episode that I probably wouldn't show another person.
I would give it a 3.
Wow, interesting. Give me a sentence of justification.
This is an episode I enjoyed very much, but it isn't something I would dare show my girlfriend. So, yeah, I'm looking for the magical episode that I can show to her so that she will finally understand what is so great about Star Trek.
Interesting.
I think you're going to have to wait till Ensign Rowe shows up for your girlfriend.
I'm not sure, but I'm not sure it's going to be a Rowe episode.
Huh.
I don't know.
Sean, what'd you think?
I'm going to go 3 as well, for similar reasons. I thought it was average, but had a really nice kind of macabre vibe to it, but there were still a lot of logical flaws that are kind of confusing. But I don't look forward to this one when it comes on again. Just that jingle bell, whatever dance music in her head is just really irritating to hear over and over.
Clay, finish this up.
I'm going to say a 4 for me.
Hey.
But I think in the larger scheme of things, I would say a 3. Because I give it a 4 for me because up to this point, I feel like this one has surprised me the most and given me the most hope for the show moving forward.
Yep.
But I don't know if it would be on the top of the list of stuff I'd say, like, oh, you want to get into Star Trek, let me show you this episode. This probably wouldn't be in the top 10. But going through them as we are, this one was like a nice breath of fresh air. So
Interesting. Let's see what I want to do here. I'm going to give this one a 5.
A 5?
Yeah, I give this one a 5. I really...
Wes, we might have to kick you off the show.
I don't think... I think I perceive my rating system differently than other people perceive it.
You do. We had the same conversation on Q Who.
I think that if you guys don't think that this is one of the best things that the show can do, I think you're never going to say that any of the episodes are a 5.
That's not true.
Man, that's way not true.
I think this episode is one of the best things the show can do, but it's not one of the best things the show does.
Yeah, you mean the execution wasn't up to par?
I mean, like, I think they're playing in the right sandbox, but they haven't built the castle yet, so to speak.
Okay.
I think
that was a great metaphor.
that metaphor was a 5.
I love this episode.
Podcast where Wes counts from 1 to 5 and make sure he knows that 5 is anywhere near 1.
2, 3, 5. I think I love the mystery. I'll justify myself a little bit. I love the mystery episodes. They're some of my favorite of Star Trek. I love the sort of, this is the show doing ethics right, where it doesn't tell me that there's an answer, because their answers are usually quite stupid when they try to give me a hard answer.
Right.
I love the sort of vagueness of it. It's got a little bit of everything. It's got a little bit of action for people. It's got a little bit of mystery. It's got a little bit of romance. It's got a little bit of emotion. I think this show does. This was the first episode where my wife was watching it, was actually like not checking her phone, So I think that this is an episode I could show to a non-Trek fan, and I could understand why they would like it. If they didn't like it, I'd assume they don't like Star Trek, but this has everything I think that a lot of people would like, and the story's good enough to keep people engrossed in it. So, in that way of thinking, I think it's a very, very strong episode. That's basically it.
I buy that.
I'm sorry I make fun of you, Wes.
This will be Sean's last show.
Let's so Sean or for Tana, Sean, or Orkla, there hasn't been a 5 yet for anybody.
No, nowhere near a 5 yet.
This is the closest for me that I've come.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think Wes and Clay, if you're very much watching it in order. So I have the whole series in my head. So I think of the 5s. I think of Yesterday's Enterprise, and I know that'll be a 5 when I see it.
Yep.
And I look at it overarching. So when I look at this episode, it's for me it's a different experience. Whereas you guys are going in order, so I could see why you'd be tempted by 4s and 5s.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
It's it's always been one of my favorites. It's up there with Royale. I would think I'd call them my underrated classics. That I sort of enjoy.
I might disagree with you on that one.
I really liked the Royale, Wes. I'm so glad that you came out positively. I was convinced that you would hate it, and for whatever reason, you really loved that episode. It just sort of made me smile at my desk because I also really enjoyed that episode. And it's so dumb, but I really liked it, and it was surprising to like something so early in the season.
It's a lot of fun. My last thing that I'll say is that if you go back and you watch the Ensigns of Command, which is the one right before this, that to me is, I gave it a 2, but that to me is a 3 because that show at this point is a super generic Star Trek episode. There's like very little stakes. It's about moving a colony off a planet they don't want to leave. That to me at this point of where the series is going to be, those are going to be the 3s. And anything that makes me slightly happier than that is going to be a 4 or 5. That's basically my last thing.
Okay. Interesting.
Cool, guys. Well, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us again.
I'd love
Thanks so much for having us.
I'd love to have everybody back. We'll do.
Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, no problem. Yesterday's Enterprise. I'll mark that down. Tana, what's your first 5 right off the top of your head? When does it come up?
What's my first 5 episodes that I love?
No. What do you think is coming up to be the best episode, like in order that we're going through?
I have no idea.
No idea. It's probably Yesterday's Enterprise, I'd assume.
Is that this season?
It is.
Yeah, that's probably it.
It's probably
for me. Yeah.
10 episodes in, I think.
Usually voted the best episode outside of the finale.
So I find that really interesting because I feel like Yesterday's Enterprise, if I remember it correctly, you kind of have to be pretty fluent with the concept and the show itself in order to really appreciate it.
It's the episode that's going to throw a wrench to my system because I think if you're unfamiliar with that episode, it has nowhere near the impact. If you're unfamiliar with the show to that point.
Right. Like say you didn't watch the first season and have no idea who Tasha Yar is.
Yes, her appearance would be terrible.
Tasha back? Is that what's about to happen, Clay?
Oh, yeah.
Are you super excited about this?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
She kept picketing Denise Crosby kept picketing the writing staff and like waiting at the end of their driveway, bugging them to get back on the show. So she kept cooking up these cockamamie ideas to get her brought back into uniform.
Just wait till she comes back as a Romulan, Tana.
Oh God, does she really?
Oh yeah.
She comes back as
there's so much I don't know, you guys.
She comes back as Armus actually, and Armus takes command of the Enterprise and flies it around. It's really something. Anyway,
now, see, that's a perfect example of someone who doesn't want to live with the consequences of the choices they've made.
Yes, that's exactly true. It all comes full circle, doesn't it, guys? Just like a ship spinning in space.
Hey, one day when we're all in Boston together, we should record something while drinking.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be fun.
It would be a Star Trek episode, in case that wasn't understood.
I'm sorry.
You mean like a concept album? Or
I'm sorry, you can listen to all 49 previous episodes of the show, and that'll be me right there. I should have put a beer rating too. I should have had some kind of thing like I was 3 beers deep when I watched this episode, and then I was a 6-pack deep when I watched this one and gave it a 6. But anyway, thank you guys, and I'm going to be back next time with Who Watches the Watchers, which is a wonderful little title.
Nice.
And
Wes, you should only record these alone if you choose to, because I think there's. Us nerds are always excited to talk about Star Trek.
Well, I appreciate that. I do it alone just because I have to keep up something of a schedule, and I feel bad asking, but I would always prefer to have other people on, so I will take you guys up on that offer.
Just if you and Tana would be great, or you and me, and we just cut Clay out of this a little bit.
Absolutely,
yeah, basically, now that you guys all know each other, stop calling me, all right?
Clay has a really great voice. I find his voice really soothing.
Yeah, I say we Tasha Yar Clay out of this podcast.
He's got a big. We'll just take video, and he's got a big wine, like a wine birthmark on his forehead, and it's just like, Clay is no longer going to be here.
I'm going to start my own Star Trek podcast. It's going to be better than this one, and everyone's going to want to be on it.
It'll be something. All right, guys, thank you very much. I'm going to wrap this up, and I'll be back with Who Watches the Watchers. Say goodbye.
See you later.
Bye.